The following podcast is brought to you by PeacemakerNetwork.com. PeacemakerNetwork.com. Audio is provided by Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com.
Charlie Kirk was shot and killed, but the question almost no one is asking, could this have been stopped before he was killed? Could the tragedy have been prevented? Well, we're going to talk about this and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. It's what some people are calling, or they're calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. The Charlie Crimebuster name and all forms and abbreviations are property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent unless or until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains adult subject matter. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to another podcast today. We're going to be talking about Charlie Kirk, what everybody's been talking about for this last week. I guess you could say it was the shot heard around the world. In fact, the whole world has been talking about the political assassination of Charlie Kirk. Well, we will be unraveling this tragedy, and we will be answering the question, could this tragedy have been prevented? Now, as we get into this today, please take a moment, hit that like button, as well as subscribe to the podcast. That way, you will be updated every time we drop another podcast. Please check out our sponsor, PeacemakerNetwork.com. Now, I'll be the first to admit that it's easy to become critical after the fact. It's commonly called and referred to as Monday morning quarterbacking. But on today's podcast, I'm going to talk about the security. I'm going to put my security expert consulting hat on as we unravel this tragic event that took Charlie Kirk's life all too soon. Now, before we get to the security part that was there to protect Charlie, let's take a little bit of a look at the world before that fatal moment. Let's talk about his influence. Even before that fateful event, the moment that would be played over and over again and debated without cease, well, the world knew Charlie Kirk as a figure that was larger than life. His voice, of course, was heard across college campuses. He was broadcast on the media, and we do know that it is actually come to the point that his name is a fixture when you talk about politics, the culture. Of course, for many, he's a symbol of conviction for his supporters, and, a lightning rod for his critics. We do know that his presence filled auditoriums and sound bites alike. Now, we do also know that we talk about the political stage, that he is moving through a world that has all kinds of division. The halls of universities, which one time was places where you could sit around and learn, now they have become arenas of debate, and Kirk is certainly at the center of that debate. He challenged people, he provoked them, he inspired folks. And students, all the students, lined up not just to listen, but they would come to spar with his ideas. Even the faculty, they would debate his appearance. Alumni wrote letters. Media outlets, both mainstream and the other, they would all talk about his speeches. They would interview those who liked him and those who did not like him. In a divided world, Charlie Kirk, he was both the symptom and an architect of the social discourse, according to many people. And we cannot help but think that social media, they did shape the world of the knowledge of Charlie Kirk. Millions followed his accounts. They would watch his videos. They would debate his tweets. We know that his supporters, they really let the world know about his commentary on pressing issues. Now, before the tragedy, the culture, of course, was electric with activism and tension. Political engagements surged among younger generations. Causes were championed through hashtags, campus rallies. I'm saying all this to say that Charlie Kirk was larger than life. He had such an impact on so many people. I have to admit that I knew about Charlie Kirk but I did not realize and really know the person until this happened, and I come to understand much more about him. He was a man with a mission. He was a bold man. He was a man who would not back down. He was a man who stood true to his Christian commitment. And this man is gone. But the question is, did this have to happen? Could it have been prevented? This man who impacted millions of lives, could his life have been saved through proper security protocol? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to get into it in just a moment. But now we're going to take a little moment, we're going to take our breath, and we're going to breathe a little bit. And we're going to take time to smile, and we're going to just share with you what we share often in these programs where we cover dark sides of life. And we're going to kind of smile and talk about Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, when a cousin was seriously injured in a motorcycle crash in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, well, there was a lady by the name of Vanessa Lewis. She had good intentions, it appeared, of helping. So in August 2024, she set up a GoFundMe campaign to support her cousin's recovery, and it drew in more than $40,000 in donations. But now investigators are telling us that that money was never used for medical care. Instead, they say Lewis spent the funds on herself, including a cruise. Yep. The investigation began when the injured man's father, now listen to this, saw photos of Lewis posted on social media while she was on a cruise. Then he soon discovered the account's funds, well, they had dwindled, and then he contacted the police. And the police report revealed that the account had over $40,000 in August 2024, but by March of 2025, it had been reduced to just over $3,000. And they're now saying that she allegedly withdrew or transferred more than $37,000 from the account. And one of the largest expenses? $6,200 tied to a Carnival Cruise Line ship sailing out of the port of Miami. Now, while the media reported the ship was the Carnival Parade, it may have been the Carnival Paradise. It did sail from Tampa in 2024, and then the Miami-based ships all sound like the same. Whichever, she was on a Carnival ship. And police did find evidence of a wire transfer of more than $21,000 yet to another account. So now Lewis, 29 years of age, she's facing charges of theft by deception, receiving stolen property. She was released on a $10,000 bail. Her hearing, well, it just took place, will take place in just a couple of days on September the 16th, Tuesday, 2025. And according to Pennsylvania law, well, theft by deception, it's a felony of a third degree if the value is more than $2,000. Yep, and this was more than $2,000. If found guilty, penalty is up to 7 years in prison and a fine of $15,000. So this lady who steals money set aside for a broken up and hurt relative and then is so stupid to post her live it up life on a cruise paid for by stolen money is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Now I think we can all agree that Charlie Kirk was certainly a legacy in motion. So the question is, why did this legacy in motion have to be silenced by the sound of a gunshot? Could it have been avoided? And I am going to take a look at this now through the lens of professional security. Well, we know now that authorities have identified 22-year-old Tyler Robinson as a suspect who allegedly fatally shot conservative activist and father of two, Charlie Kirk. Of course, he is the founder of the conservative youth organization Turning Point USA, and sadly was killed this past Wednesday at a campus event at Utah Valley University. This is about 39 miles south of Salt Lake City. Now, Robinson was taken in custody in Washington County, and he was caught within 33 hours of the shooting, according to the FBI. So how did this all come to be? Well, on September the 10th, on Wednesday, at 8:29 Mountain Time, now that's Mountain Time, by the way, well, Robinson, the shooter, arrives on campus. He's driving a gray Dodge Challenger. That's we get from Utah Governor Spencer Cox. He was wearing at that point a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, light-colored shoes, and a black hat with a white logo. Officials then stated that Robinson changes into dark clothing on campus before the shooting. And according to the commissioner of the Utah Department of Public Safety, they have a video showing the suspect moving onto the campus, through the stairwells, and up to a roof, and across the roof to a shooting location. Around 12:05 p.m., Mountain Time again, the crowd is waiting for Kirk, the first stop in his tour. Supporters are chanting his name. And according to the student paper, well, Kirk was hosting this event, and we all seen this now, in the Fountain Courtyard. At around 12:09, Kirk appears before the crowd. They're estimating the crowd around 3,000 people. He throws hats out to the crowd. And then he sits down and he starts his famous debate. People are asking questions. And at 12:23 p.m., Kirk is hit with a single shot. And investigators say the shot came from a nearby rooftop. Then we know the subject will move to the other side of the building. He jumps off the building and he flees the campus into a nearby neighborhood. That's according to another source. The video then shows Kirk being carried by 6 men to a SUV, which then transports him to the local hospital. So we know now that this young shooter has been jailed and is awaiting trial. But let me ask you a question. Does this shooting remind you of anything? Certainly did me right off the bat. It's Butler, Pennsylvania all over again. That was where another guy got on a rooftop and took a shot at the President of the United States, and the bullet glazed his ear. And unfortunately, other people were killed and wounded. I mean, it's just like it, isn't it? The guy jumped on a roof, took a shot. Now, my question is, what security leader has not studied what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania? And then my question is, knowing what we know about Butler, Pennsylvania, why wasn't somebody watching the rooftops at this event? Now, I'm going to be talking frankly about Charlie Kirk's security, and some are saying, well, if the Secret Service could not prevent Trump from being shot at, what makes us think that Charlie Kirk's limited security could do any better? Now, while it is true that his security was not nor expected to be as robust as the president's security, in my mind, even with the limited budget, this tragedy could have been avoided, even with the limited security around Charlie Kirk. There, I said it. Now, I know this is Monday morning quarterbacking, but as a security leader in the industry, you would expect any security leader in America to have studied the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting, to learn to better serve the clients that you protect. We have at our company that I work in, and they should have, those who served Kirk had taken the same deep look at what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. And I'm going to make this very simple. And I'm not here to cast bad light on those brave people that were surrounding Charlie Kirk any more than I wanted to pass bad light on the agents that quickly rushed to President Trump, put their bodies before the bullets. Those were brave people. I'm talking about the overall security footprint of an event. And I'm going to make it simple. Any security expert knows that there are 3 rings of security around a protectee. There should have been 3 rings around Charlie Kirk. First of all, there's the inner layer. That's the immediate presence of the protectee, which in this case is Charlie Kirk. Now, they had been doing and were doing a great job there. They were watching the crowd for any immediate attack from those people right up close to him. They were ready to intervene, stop someone from getting to Charlie Kirk with a knife or even with a gun. But my friend, you've got to realize that in security, there's not just one layer. There are at least 3 layers of security. And those areas appear to have been neglected. You have the inner layer. Next is the center layer. That is a layer out from the inner area. It is kind of in the center of the venue. Now, maybe there were police officers in that area. Maybe even some plain clothes officers in that area. I don't know. I don't have the information. I'm not privy to that kind of information. Perhaps even those in the inner area were looking beyond the immediate into the center area. That could well have happened. I don't know. But the question of the day is, why were there not plans of security in that outer area, the third layer of security? Now, again, I understand that his security would not have the budget of the federal government to protect him. But there was money set aside for his security. In fact, I bet you'd be surprised how much money they were spending on Charlie Kirk's security. We know there were at least 6 guys that carried him to the SUV. We don't know how many other security people were there. So my question is, why wasn't some of the money that was budgeted to protect Charlie Kirk, why wasn't some of that money spent protecting threats from the outer area? Now, that does not mean, as you've heard people say on all of these news programs, that, in order to protect him, you would need counter snipers out there, the kind of big movement that the president and other people who like that may have. That would have been nice, but counter snipers would not have been necessary to still protect him from the outer area. Let me ask you a question. If I had been doing that event, I would have put some spotters out there, right? Some spotters. Some spotters that would be watching the rooftops around that venue. Can I say it again? Butler, Pennsylvania. The shot came from far away from one of the rooftops. It was an outdoor gathering, just like a gathering that Charlie Kirk was at. There were rooftops out in that outer area. Why wasn't someone watching that area? We do know now that some people saw somebody up there from the crowd. The same thing happened with President Trump in his attempted assassination. People saw that guy on the roof. So you need to have, in these venues, spotters looking at that outside area. Why didn't that happen? You could even get volunteers. He has a large organization. It doesn't cost any money for you to point some volunteers out and look at the roofs, does it? Keep your eye on the roof. Your main mission is to watch the roof. Watch those high points where a sniper would lodge to make a shot. Just watch it. That's your job. Focus on it. Nothing else. Just focus on the rooftops. We do know now, both in Butler and Utah, as I said a moment ago, the shooter was observed by casual attendees. Now, if they were observed by casual attendees, they certainly could be observed from dedicated individuals whose mission was, listen to this, mission was to observe and report. Hey, my friend, for fewer dollars than you realize, they could have even hired a local security company to be stationed to watch the roofs. Wouldn't cost very much to do that. I know, I'm in that business. You see, my friend, if they were watching the roof, then a report could have been made to the security team. That security team who were right there around them, a report to them, and they could do what we call scoop up and go. They could have grabbed him, taken him off that stage, got him to safety, even before that guy had an opportunity to set up his shot. The first moment a suspicious person is viewed from the rooftops, they could have done a scoop and go. Well, you said suspicious. Well, how do we know that this guy was going to shoot? What defines suspicious? Well, my friend, I'm telling you, in those cases, guys with a gun, they are suspicious. Even if they didn't have a gun, anybody on a rooftop crawling around and getting around to get ready into shooting position is suspicious. Just a simple addition to his security footprint. Observe, report, move. Let me say those 3 words again. Observe, report, move. Observe, report, scoop, and move. Observe, report, move. Well, you could say they never had any problems coming from the outer area before. That's not an excuse. That's not an excuse for not planning for that possibility from any security presence. It would have been the very first place I would have been concerned about if I was responsible for Charlie Kirk's security on that day or any other day. I would have already learned that from Butler, that a speaker in an outdoor event better prepare to watch that area. Hey, here's another thing. What about a drone? In addition, a drone. Drones are not that expensive today. How about somebody who knows how to fly a drone, who knows how to really watch and observe the camera of the drone? How about a two-man team with a drone, in addition to spotters? Not an expensive fix. The sad part of this is that, according to what we know now, I'm not sure that that protection was even thought about. Oh, now, I'm not trying to downcast those brave people that were around him that day. I'm sure they were very brave people. We know they were very close to Kirk. And I think that they were doing their job to protect that inner layer. And they were doing a great job, just like the Secret Service agents that rushed the stage when Donald Trump was shot and wounded. Just like those brave men and women that jumped on that stage, put their body before the bullet. There is no doubt in my mind that these brave people that were around him, that carried him to the SUV, that got him to the hospital, there's no doubt that they would have put their bodies before him and a bullet. They would put their bodies before that bullet. But when you get back to the leadership, when you get back to the person who's planning out the security plan for that event, and I hope they had a plan. When you get down to that person, especially after the shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania, why wouldn't you have spotters to observe and report so you could move? Reserve and support so you could scoop up. Observe and report so you could scoop up the protectee. And get him out the moment suspicious activity was seen on a rooftop with a sight to the event. How could that happen? It may be a question that people do not want to ask, but my friend, we should be asking it. We must ask it if we are to keep additional tragedies like this happening. Now, again, you may get back to me and say, well, the Secret Service, they had people observing and they still could not protect the president. Oh, please, please, please. Don't you dare go there. We have had plenty of time to study that event and to realize the shortcomings of the Secret Service on that day. They, too, had time to get President Trump off the stage. If they had been doing their job and listening to the reports of the shooter's activity. There were plenty of people saying there is a suspicious person walking around. He had a scope. He was scoping out distances. There were plenty of people who saw him on the roof. They were even running to the roof. And they had even put it over the radio, but the message, the communication did not get to the Secret Service. It was a terrible, serious breach of security that day. Had the Secret Service had their communication lines open, they too would have been reported. Well, first of all, it would have been observed. Then it would have been reported. And then they would have scooped and moved him out of danger. They did not do that. So don't tell me that the Secret Service did their job on that day with President Trump. They did not do their job that day with President Trump. So the idea that the Secret Service couldn't protect him, so how could we expect a security agency or leadership or company or whoever's involved or whoever's responsible to simply take the time to put spotters out there, to put a camera out there, to put a drone out there? They could have taken time to have spotters watching every one of those roofs. It's not a hard fix. They observe, they report, and then they move. Observe, report, move. They see a threat. They have immediately communication to the people around Charlie Kirk. They say, hey, we see what looks like a guy on the roof. Immediately, the team collapses in around the protectee. They get him off that venue. They get him out of that stage. They get him to protection. Only if they had put some spotters out. Watch those rooftops. I believe this tragedy could have been prevented. Now, I know that that's not a popular thing to say, and our thoughts and prayers are with Charlie Kirk's family, with his security detail. I know they feel very terrible right now, and I'm not trying to necessarily pile on, but I do need to make my voice heard that there are ways that that event could have been better protected. Observe, report, move. 3 simple words that just might have saved Charlie Kirk's life. This is Charlie Crimebuster, and it's a sad day that our actions in this country have gone to political violence. Charlie Kirk stood for debating the ideas. He would let other people have their time to say what they wanted to say about a topic. He was at most respectful to people who thought in another way. I said as earlier in the podcast, I knew about Charlie Kirk, but I didn't know Charlie Kirk. And now, after studying his life with all of this information that's out there, not only do I now know Charlie Kirk, I respect Charlie Kirk a great more than I ever realized. This man was a champion for freedom of speech in this country. Freedom of speech without violence. And I think we cannot close this podcast without taking a moment to remember him and remember his family. So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster saying, stay alert, be observant, for the life you save may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional information and podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. All music and sound effects are courtesy of Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag @CharlieCrimebuster, and then click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way for you to listen to our podcasts, or for you to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crimebuster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you, so please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us again for another exciting crime episode with Charlie Crimebuster.